Hi, Martin here. I've had several requests to do a video on my cold air intake that I've built. People have seen it in other videos while I'm doing other demonstrations or how-tos. And my AC has been actually giving me problems. So I had to take the cold air intake tube out. This would be an opportune time to do the video. Okay. What I got here, this is the intake tube itself. And it fastens right out here. I've covered everything in this thermal wrap because it actually does get pretty warm in the engine compartment. I've seen some people post that the tube doesn't get very hot, but I'm an infrared temperature sensor, and the bottom of this tube is around 160 degrees. Of course, I do live in the desert, but that's still pretty warm, and wrapping it with this helps quite a bit. Now, my air filter is actually mounted inside the cowl. To put the air filter in there, naturally you're going to have to remove the cowl. And it is just kind of a snug fit a little bit. Not bad though. Okay, now the entire parts list, the air cleaner, this tube, I got two elbows and a reduction and a reducer right here, with clamps, everything in this wrap, add up to $108. So not too bad. I did get these elbows on eBay. There are some cheap ones out there, and this is one of them. The product itself is fine, except in here, right in the inside of the 90, there's literally this huge chunk of rubber that took out, it reduced the 90 pipe by 30%. So I spent quite some time cutting that out of there and getting it to where it should be. So there are, like I say, some good ones, some cheap ones. Okay, now what I used here, this is the EMT, which is an electrical conduit. I'm in the electrical trade, and you get scrap pieces of this, and no sense you throwing it away. This is 3-inch EMT, but EMT is kind of, it's funny, it's 3-inch EMT, but it measures almost 3.5 inches to the outside. Alright, now to get the cowl off, first we've got to remove the windshield wipers. There's like 7 or 8 screws here. There it goes. Like that. Oh yeah. Okay, here's my air filter. You can see the elbow right there. I did make this hole as well. Now when I did this, I went ahead and removed from here on all the way over. I removed this factory grill that was in here, just to help out the airflow, and I don't think this looks bad at all. Okay, now to remove the air filter, just loosen the hose clamp. Like I say, it's just a little bit of a snug fit. Now right here, you just got to squeeze it a little bit to pull it out, and there you are. Okay, I also drilled I think this is a 4-inch hole right here. And that's just so I could get back here to the firewall. And you'll want to leave this piece of plastic on there. That way no rain can drop down in here directly, because right here is the hole that goes to your, for your air conditioning and heating and the air intake for that. I also, if you look here on the windshield wiper, I got it in a position where it's coming over furthest here so you can see this. There are 2 little pieces of metal that stuck out right here, and I sanded them down smooth, because I see that the windshield wiper actually did hit the top of the air cleaner. So that does come rather close. By the way, I'm running an air raid. I do not know the actual part number for this yet. I'll post it if I can find it. Overall length is 7.5 inches. The top is about 3 3/4 inches across. The bottom is right at 5 inches across, with a 3.5 inch inside diameter of the flange right here. Alright, probably one of the hardest things to do would be to cut the hole through the cowl here. Personally, I used a 4-inch hole saw. Now, this is kind of tricky, because for one, you don't want to drill the hole down through the surface flat like this, because you got this pipe going through there like this. So you need to go through straight through as you would with the conduit here. Well, the tricky part about that, you start drilling through, and as soon as the bottom side of the hole saw touches this, it's going to want to rip this thing out of your arm. So, I mean, it is the way I did it, but you got to be very careful. And that gives you the proper shape of the hole, because it's going to end up being a little bit oblong, which is kind of what it needs to be. Now, you could probably drill the hole with the smaller hole saw, drill it through flat, draw a line on here, use tin snips, or die grinders, all kinds of other tools to make that hole. Then I went online and just simply punched in rubber gasket, and you'll find a company that'll sell this stuff by the foot. And to give this a nice seal around this conduit here, because I don't want no air, engine air, getting in here, which will end up eventually getting inside the the cabin of the Jeep. And this is not the particular one I used. It is somewhat similar, because it has this flap on here, which is actually in the inside part of this right here, so it gives it a nice seal. Okay, and the position or the placement of the hole that I made, going off the inside of the fender, is like pretty much dead on 12 inches. Okay. And then I went directly in between the middle of this point here and this flat section down here. Halfway in between, that's where I made the hole. Another thing you need to do is move this purge valve, part of the emissions. And there is a bolt right there. That is the original bolt that held that in place. Now what I did is I actually used the factory mount that was there, bent it a little different. I believe I drilled this hole here. It's been a while. And I mounted it right here. Okay, this just pulls right off of there. And you want to make sure you got proper hood clearance. I kind of did bend this bracket down, so when the hood does close, this hinge does not hit on top of here or any of this wiring. I had to lengthen the hoses because it was back here, and it's pretty simple, just a couple feet of vacuum line. The electrical was no problem, it reached just fine right there. And that's basically the hardest part of this whole installation, is that hole right there. Alright, now for this part of the installation, I got a 3.5. I believe that is a 3-inch reducing coupler in here, made out of the same material as these 90s were made out of. And these are like turbo 90s, they're automotive 90s. And then I got just a small piece of conduit right in there, a little 3-inch piece to couple everything together. Wrapped everything in the thermal wrap. And then I used the factory your factory 90 that you had to your original air box. Now, what I wanted to do, and the reason I had to go this way, I'm using a Hesco, whatever, that's a 1+ inch spacer that they got there. This came on my Jeep when I did buy it. Now, this is what I wanted to go to, because this fits directly over the air intake. Now, because of, even if I reduced this as much as I could and cut off and stuck it on here, it was still going to be too high for the hood clearance. What I'm going to show you, let's see, yeah, there, and that would have fit on there like that. What I'm going to do is remove the spacer. We'll put the throttle back on, and we'll see if this works as well. And then all you need to do, assuming this is all going to fit in there nicely, is just run a longer piece all the way up to this point, where it'll hook up to here. Okay? If you're running a throttle body spacer, this is basically the way you got to go. I went ahead and removed that Hesco spacer. She dropped it down another 1¼ inches, and put the throttle body back on. Now, what I thought to go ahead and do is see if I can get this piece that I originally wanted to put in there, add the one-piece conduit all the way from point A to B, right there, and I'm just going to, I found this little spacer that's the right outside diameter. I'm going to go ahead and cut a hole in here, weld that in here for the blow-by on the motor. Okay. Got my hole marked right here. I'm going to use a uni-bit to drill it out. Now I got the hole drilled to the proper diameter. I'm just going to take this and kind of okay, I got that tapped in there, and it is perfectly flush. So there's no obstruction. Okay, I'm going to weld this on here. Alright, got the new one welded up, right in there. Now, remove the old one. There we go. Now, I don't have this one thermal wrapped yet, but I will. And there's a changeover right there. That went really actually quite well. I seem to be just a little bit higher than I was before. This was literally sitting on the valve cover, and I'm just over it, probably by 3/16 of an inch right there. Close the hood, make sure that everything clears still. If not, I can still trim a little bit off the 90 right here, off the bottom. Alright, I did have some hood clearance problems, and that's mostly due because I'm running the Chrysler Baron turbo vents. Now you can see right there, this material I had to remove to get proper clearance. You probably won't even have a problem if you're not running these type of vents, or vents that go below the surface of the hood. These drop down like about 3/8 of an inch. So I did cut this down as much as I could to the point where the intake tube sits pretty much right on top of the valve cover. Okay. I also cut this back, took off about 1 inch, and the reason was because of the hood clearance, and the intake tube itself was sitting on top of this and causing, more hood clearance problems right there. So by cutting this back, I still have 1 inch of the tube stuck in here, which is more than enough. I did remove the vent to get proper clearance, to make it easier, and you can see the tube there, and just by removing the vent and placing it in here is how you can get it figured out. Alright, installation is pretty much complete. All I need to do is wrap this part of the intake tube with a thermal wrap to keep the heat off of there. I really like the way this turned out. I do like this version, other than the hood clearance problems, but we got that solved. Another nice thing about this, you remove that factory air box and you open up that whole area there for whatever accessory, another battery, onboard compressor. And this up here with the Cowl induction, you're actually raising the air intake probably nearly 1 foot from where it was, which going to help you as far as it can act as a snorkel. You're not going to get as good a snorkel as, let's say, you have one mounted up on the A-pillar up here. But for most situations, this is going to work great. The only disadvantage I could find in this is on a cold start, the idle air control valve is acting like a choke, and you'll end up getting a hiss inside the cabin area coming through the cowl. This lasts for about 1 or 2 minutes, probably depending on how cold it is. It goes away quite quickly. And then when you trump on the gas on this thing, it sounds great. You get quite a roar out of this thing. So I'm very happy with it. I also got some more videos coming up, and it's going to have to do with the intake and throttle body area there. I think you're really going to like this. So please subscribe, and thanks for watching.